There's a great similarity between the way Parchman was set up on a slave plantation. The idea was to have a predominantly black convict population, up to 75 to 78%, 1900. The idea was to bring the convicts up here, put them in an environment exactly like law-abiding blacks, white field workers, and everything else that Mississippi had, and let them succeed or fail through that. And if they succeeded, they got rewards.
The state's penal code made no distinction between juvenile and adult offenders, and at least one convict in 4 was an adolescent. In that way, little had changed by the time Albert Harris arrived in 1981.
Well, when I first got here, I was 16 years old. They sent me to Unit 29. I was probably the youngest one over there at the time.
It was not his age, but the nature of his crime that got Harris sent to Parchman Farm.
We got a buyer. He wants to make the exchange in international waters, so the goods are loaded onto a boat down at the docks. Get it out to the drop-off, and we got our money.
You know, and that scared me, man. Even though I had committed a gruesome act like as I did, you know, it just scared the crap out of me. You know, because I thought they were going to try to kill me. You know, and I couldn't rest until I had got sentenced.
Harris expects he will spend the rest of his life here. One more name and number in Mississippi's enormous prison farm.
We have some that range from a year, maybe for a DUI felony, that ranges all the way up to mandatory life without parole. We also have death row offenders who are here for committing heinous crimes, just about any crime that you can think of. We have age maybe some from 14 on up to offenders maybe 80 years of age. We have all age groups here.
But at Parchman, age is less important than the length of your sentence. Some of Parchman's inmates will be here until they die.
Cotton, peas, and okra, and mostly peas and cotton. I done picked, say, 150 pounds of cotton, 300 pounds of cotton a day.
By 1920, the regimen of life and labor was well established at the Mississippi State Penitentiary.
Hello, Pegasus Lifestyle Management. How can I help you?
New inmates
Great. The aircraft is waiting for you at our nearest airfield. We trust you'll be happy, sir.
Who had life for murder, would first be sent to front camp, where they were fingerprinted, photographed, and issued black and white striped uniforms known as ring-arounds. Then they faced their new life on Parchman Farm, a life that still resonates today.
When you first come in, you're told to strip. You strip in front of all other men. Sometimes now there's women guards, you may have to strip in front of them. And your cavity search. It's a scary thing. I mean, you're coming into a world you've never known before. And it's one of the scariest places in the world. Everything changes. You've got somebody telling you what to do, when to do, how to do. And it's not always a guard. Sometimes it's inmates. You know, and here the strongest rule. Now, I'm not saying they survive, I say they rule.
Parchman's inmates still wear stripes on their pants. Trustees, or low security inmates, wear green. Black stripes are worn by the gunmen, prisoners who must be supervised by armed correctional officers when they leave their cells. Red stripes are reserved for the highest risk inmates at Parchman. They are deemed to be the most violent offenders, prone to escape and assault. They are closely watched and rarely leave their cells. Life in Parchman's original camps was simple and primitive. Meals were served outdoors. And at night, as many as 100 inmates were locked inside dormitories that were known as cages.
so many people I talked to about Parchman seem appalled when I say that inmates ran the dormitories. There was a cage boss in charge, a canteen man who balanced him off in power structure. They worked with the permission of the camp sergeant and the captain. If there were trouble with a convict, who would the sergeant and captain turn to? The cage boss to take care of it. How he took care of it was his business. But they wanted the convict fit the field work the next day.
Punishment was meted out with a brutal instrument called Black Annie.
Black Annie was a high. It was about 4.5 feet long. Some of them had holes cut in it. When they hit you, they suck that the meat up through them holes and be a bluestone. But that was a bad thing, that high. So was. But he kept each and every man under control.
Job assignments did not reflect the inmate's crime or sentence, and all able-bodied men were sent to work in the long line.
Merriweather, for all your private security needs. How can I help? Helicopter support unit will be with you right away.
Inmates in this line, and they do jobs such as chop cotton, pick peas, butter beans, dig ditches, clean out ditches. A driver, which worked for the sergeant, actually worked for inmates in the field.
I worked on a long line about 8 months. Really, I picked cotton about 2 months and put me in the kitchen because I couldn't pick cotton. Then I thought they were going to give me that open that they gave me for not picking that 150 pound cotton.
By the 1930s, the long lines, the towers, and every other area of the prison were under the control of inmates armed with rifles. Known as trusty shooters, this elite class of prisoner was composed mostly of murderers with life sentences whom prison officials relied on for security until 1972.
Well, trustee shooters are inmates that have been classified and approved to hold guns, and their mission is to keep other inmates from escape.
Trusty shooters were motivated by special privileges like private rooms and better food. A trusty shooter who killed an inmate running from the work line was often rewarded with an early release. Horace Carter is now 76 years old, but he first came to Parchman as a young man, barely 21.
1946. I killed that boy that robbed. I went back, I killed another boy, I got 5 years. And they let me out, another boy run me down, beat me up. The next day I met him and I killed him. So I've been here with him.
Carter recalls the rewards he enjoyed as a trusty shooter during the 1950s, including sex.
We had good privilege. Had plenty to eat. Had plenty of hustling women coming here. And see, this is the first penitentiary ever had hustling women. Mississippi State Penitentiary. They just come in here on buses, come in here on vans, on cars, and had inmates lined up on me that brick field like they're waiting to go in.
In 1956, sexual privileges, or conjugal visits as they are now known, were officially extended to the prison's married inmates. Small wooden cottages were built by the inmates to afford privacy. Prisoners and staff called them the Red House, or the Tunk.
Sometimes inmates that weren't married, if you didn't watch them real close, would slip and go to the Red House or to the Tunk. They would meet probably another inmate's sister or another inmate's cousin.
You got your bed, your toilet, and a place bowl in there. It's not paradise here, but it'll do, and they're not complaining about it, so.
Perhaps the most important privilege afforded to Parchman's inmates today is job training. The convicts here learn marketable trades like bricklaying. Each morning, 40 inmates arrive in the prison's masonry shop to build cinder block walls, then take them apart and start over. State vehicles with dented fenders or scratched paint are repaired by inmates in the prison's auto body shop. The work experience prepares short-term inmates and lifers to re-enter the workforce when and if they are released.
They get them dudes to do that job, and then an auto repair shop will charge you an arm, a leg, or foot, and a toe.
At
For them
Parchman's
dudes doing that
Aquaculture
labor for
Pond,
much of
inmates
nothing.
like Roosevelt Wilson
Bunch of
operate
bullshit.
machinery that feeds 20,000 catfish, enough to feed the prison's inmates and staff twice a year. Parchman's welding school is a hot and dangerous environment where inmates are trusted not to make weapons while they learn.
My name is Carter Crawford from Navy, Mississippi. About 70 miles from here.
Frost hopes for a job in a shipyard or as a steel worker when he completes his 15-year sentence for robbery.
Just the fact that I was facing 15 years mandatory, and in the back of my mind, I couldn't see myself living through 15 years, but here today I've done over 10, and it's short now, and I can see a future. I can see a hope for myself.
The 1930s saw Parchman's population soar to more than 2,000. This reflected a growing number of women convicted of serious crimes. The women's camp would remain in operation until 1971. Mattie Washington, a cook from Sunflower County, had come to Parchman in 1928 with a life sentence for murder. Artless Randolph had 5 years for manslaughter. Corinne McBride, a 26-year-old housewife, would spend a year at Parchman as a convicted forger.
The women had their own camp at Parchman. In it, they sat like pupils in school with their old Singer sewing machine sitting in front of them, and they worked pretty much a 10-hour day. What kind of stuff did they basically make with the sewing machines? The up and down and ring around convict striped uniforms, but also the suit of clothing that the convict got on their release here.
The women were also called to the fields when extra labor was needed, or to jobs in the slaughterhouse where they prepared hog carcasses for prison consumption. It was an era that brought Parchman in closer contact with the outside world. In 1933, medical researchers came to the prison to recruit volunteers willing to risk death in the fight against encephalitis, an often fatal disease known at the time as sleeping sickness.
The test begins. In glass tubes with gauze at the ends are mosquitoes which were fed on victims of the St. Louis epidemic.
Can you feel a mosquito biting?
Yes, ma'am.
For their part, the inmates were promised a possible pardon for their meritorious acts. The state kept its word. 6 weeks later, the still healthy volunteers were granted their releases. But perhaps Parchman's greatest contribution to society was cultural.
Really a picture of you? Or is this a picture just
It is a
up
musical tradition known throughout the world as the Delta Blues. It was born in the area that surrounds Parchman Farm.
The legend of Parchman Farm, above all, comes from the blues musicians of Yazoo Belton, many of whom served time up here.
Their music was inspired by the chants inmates sang while they worked the long line on the prison plantation. but scholars have linked these to the traditional work songs of the slaves who worked those fields more than 100 years before.
I want to know, is this really you in that picture? The one that's putting down all the...
Among the most celebrated of the Delta bluesmen to do time at Parchman was Booker T. Washington White, better known as Booker White. White recorded for the Victor label between 1930 and 1937, cutting blues and religious music. It was during this period he was sent to Parchman Farm for shooting a man. At Parchman, White escaped much of the heavy field work by performing for the inmates and trustees. Before White was released in 1939, he even taught the camp sergeant's son to play guitar. After his release, White's music had spread to the juke joints and dance halls of Mississippi, and his enduring classic, Parchman Farm Blues, has been performed by countless recording artists, including Eric Clapton and the Grateful Dead, and has also incarcerated other legends like McKinley Muddy Waters Morganfield, Eddie Sunhouse, and Hootie Ledbetter, better known as Leadbelly, who also served time at the prison farm in Louisiana. For modern audiences, Leadbelly's best-known song is probably Midnight Special.
Most people who danced in the 1950s and 60s to the song The Midnight Special had no clue where the state
like I said again,
the Midnight Special was a train that left Jackson to meander through little towns of Mississippi Delta, picking up the wires
and start to know what you start to have to believe in some bullshit that thought you had
and
kids.
as it came up the tracks from the south, the light would shine on Camp 1, Black Camp. And legend came to hold that if the light from that train struck you, your woman was on board with a pardon in her hand. Now, just remember the song, Let the Midnight Special Shine its light on me.
No. We gotta sit there and pray to a white God and a white Jesus to be set free for some bullshit that somebody put on him. Because like I said again, the truth is what you believe in that slows you down for who you supposed to be. And I stress that again, supposed to be. And when I say supposed to be, you're not who you supposed to be. You are who they created you into being. They created you to be stupid. You were created by your mom and dad from the divine creator of all that's created. And then after that, you was taught to be stupid.
It was dangerous then and it's still dangerous now. Back then, we had a thing called respect. You disrespect me, I had to straighten my business.
By 1970, Parchman Farm's reputation for danger and violence was well deserved. It was one of the few penal institutions in America that was still racially segregated. Its 13 camps were filled to overflowing. The only men inside who carried guns were inmates.
Wow.
In 1972, the State Board of Health warned that conditions in the camps made them unfit for human habitation.
Camp 7. I was in Camp 8. I was in Camp 8. I was in Camp 8.
And they're rat infested. They need paint jobs. It was terrible. The sewage system up here had gone.
Yeah, they ain't had no sewage in the cell I was in.
You go to the shower up here, you're standing in raw sewage. The convicts used to tease about getting a backup bath every time they flush the toilet.
The loudest cry for help came from an obscure, illiterate inmate named Nazareth Gates. He filed a lawsuit in federal court against the state of Mississippi. Gates charged that the living conditions at Parchman were unconstitutional. The court agreed.
What? He was illiterate. He learned how to read in jail.
Parchman Farm was ordered to undergo drastic change or close.
They hired correctional officers, people instead of inmate shooters,
They integrated the inmates. They tore down most of the old buildings and built new ones. And they had a training program for the staff. About two. Present.
Thank you, love, for no D.
The training program includes paramilitary
so I don't have to pray
exercises that prepare new
like I was
recruits
taught
for the
to do in
rigors
this
of life
bullshit.
here.
I love you as much as you love me, because I know that you love the only true love there is to see, which is the light inside of every conscious thinking human living here.
The training extends to every facet of the job. Guards are well prepared to stop an escaping or assaultive inmate in his tracks. But even with constant training and a vigilant staff, no prison is immune to escape. The most recent successful breakout at Parchman occurred in May of 2000.
When I escaped from Unit 32, which is our maximum security unit, by cutting slots in the windows, right up on the windows, cut holes in there, put dummies in the beds, and crawled out of the windows.
The escaped convicts were John Woolard, a convicted murderer, and Roy Harper, imprisoned for robbery.
They cut through this fence. The fence is triple layer razor wire at the bottom on the inside. They cut through this with a hacksaw blade.
Woolard and Harper managed to walk away undetected by guards in the towers and cross through more than a mile of Parchman's farmland to freedom. Such an occurrence is a prison warden's worst nightmare.
We had that deep sinking feeling and you hope nobody get hurt out here when they escape. We just want to catch them, recapture them, get them back in custody as quick as possible without any type of people getting hurt, including inmates.
The escaped convicts were captured after 3 weeks on the run. They made it as far as Indiana before they were returned to their cells in Mississippi. In spite of the escape and the heightened security that followed it, Parchman still manages to convey the pastoral charm and character of a rural Mississippi town. Some officers and staff live in modest clapboard houses that line Guard Row, the prison's main street. They raise children here. They go to church nearby. They even have their own fire department. But there is another side to Mississippi's penal farm.
I didn't make the fields like everybody else. The second day I was here, I was in a fight. The fourth day, I stabbed the guys in the fight with. When they took me to the fields, they told us to chop the cotton. Well, I cleaned my row off just as clean as your mother's floor. And they gave me 5 licks with a hide after 4 shooters held me down. From then, I spent about 14 years on and off in a lockdown cell, 6x9 cell.
Unit 29 came online in November of 1981. At that time, it opened that night with 40 inmates to start cooking the food, and then they moved inmates in the first day of December.
In recent years, lockdown at Parchman Farm has meant a stay in Unit 29. The staff calls this high-security fortress the Concrete Palace.
I love it. Look at more white people with persons a little bit.
For those of you that don't understand old man, understand what SAG means, secretly we are gay. Swag They're so close to swag. Swag and sag. They sag to swag in jail so niggas can wash their ass. Swag.
All of the inmate staff that qualify have jobs, and then the ones that are in the lockup deal, there's administrative technician and lockup for different reasons they are not out to work. They only out of their cell 1 hour a day.
1 hour a day. Could you imagine being in a cell 23 hours in a box? I was put into this type of environment
For more
just
than
for
100
standing up
years, the men and
for the
women who
truth,
run the
even
Mississippi
though
State
I
Prison
can't
at
stand up.
Parchman have struggled to maintain the balance between maximum security and farming, between punishment and brutality. They are charged with a curious set of tasks that include preserving life and taking it away. Before the duty of execution in Mississippi was assigned permanently to Parchman Farm in 1955, 73 people were put to death in a portable electric chair that was set up in the county where the crime was committed.
Oh, that's heinous. And I say again, we, the melanated people, the first people,
Maximum
first
security unit
loving
houses
people.
56
I'm gonna do that one later on.
decustody inmates. These inmates receive no privileges, such as visitation or telephone calls. It's also the location of the gas chamber and the lethal injection room.
Mississippi has used its lethal injection room only twice since it was added in 1989. But the door to the prison's gas chamber has sealed 36 men inside as they gasped and struggled against a cloud of cyanide.
Wow. The first time they tried it, it was a miserable failure. Not many journalists showed up the second time.
In 1955, the first witnesses watched convicted murderer Gerald Gallego fight against the gas for nearly half an hour before he finally died. In 1983, witnesses looked on in horror as Jimmy Lee Gray, a convicted child killer, flailed and smashed his head wildly against the iron support pipe located a few inches behind the chair. A leather head restraint was added for subsequent executions before the gas chamber was retired in 1989. These are among the luckiest men at Parchman Farm.
And they'll come here with, say, 5 years or 10 years on their card, but if they can successfully complete this program, then they only have to do somewhere in the neighborhood of 5 months, 5.5 months.
That's a good reward to get my
I'm trained as a certified drill instructor, and you use that just as you would in the military to train the guys to keep in step also. It also works to keep them in step.
The inmates are part of a program called Regimented Inmate Discipline, or RID. Like generations of prisoners who came to the farm before them, their songs tell their story.
Look at it. Oh, niggas. Okay, one white boy. One white boy.
It's called
one white boy.
And it's used to motivate. A lot of times you get
sorry, it might be somebody work there. It just go in there.
Cadences will help you get through. They take your mind off of your mistakes. They'll take your mind off of the work that you're actually doing and make it enjoyable. And it motivates you.
Mama, mama, just cry, mama, don't cry. Little boy gonna die. Little boy gonna die. 'Cause it won't be long. It won't be long till we get on back home. Till we get on back home. Show them.
shocking new study by the American Civil Liberties Union. A shocking new study.
Have it on police. I should move. We don't move. We don't move.
Have been convicted of drug crimes, sales, and also non-violent crimes. A lot of the guys have crimes such as stealing cars, joyriding, you know, things of that nature. You'd be surprised at how many of these guys have maybe not even experienced any type of discipline or have accepted any type of discipline in their lives. But through these methods, seems to work a lot more, you get their attention.
Graduation day,
Some of them are graduating today, and after graduation, they'll probably be going home sometime next week.
Won't be long, all right?
But for most of the inmates, this is home. More than a prison, the 24,000 acres of Parchman Farm houses a community of people coping with incarceration.
My name's Robert Jackson, MSP number 40288. Been here 18 years for murder.
In 1998, after 15 years in prison, Robert Jackson earned an unusual privilege.
Bobby and I were married in 1965. We've known each other a long time. We have 2 grown children.
Every 3 months, he may join his wife for 3 days and nights in an apartment located at the site of Parchman's old camp number 3.
Okay, this, of course, is our dining area.
It's cluttered.
It's cluttered.
We got stuff piled up.
And this is the kitchen.
Of
course, that's the bath.
Over this.
We can go outside and barbecue, you know. We listen to our CDs. We like the blues. So we get lost in our CDs or watch some TV, eat, go for walks. We've sat outside quite a bit today and we both got blistered, as a matter of fact. But we enjoyed the day today.
35 years ago, we never thought it'd happen. We never thought
You don't think about things like that.
Embraced family.
You know.
For Robert Jackson, his crime is a distant memory.
Well, it was just a struggle with a gun, altercation, just a struggle with a gun. And somebody got killed.
They are not supervised, they counted every hour at night. The inmates are counted, and security is provided, but no one is there on site at the location.
They come up and blow the horn, Wednesday nights, during the night, and then daytime they'll come up and blow the horn. And just go to the door, stand at the door, and let them see, and it's over till they come again.
Robert Jackson is eligible for parole, but it has not yet been granted. The Jacksons face the very real prospect of conjugal visits in prison for the rest of their lives.
It's really the only thing a man's got to work for. I mean, it's the reward, I guess, for keeping it together.
to control their lives.
The only thing that, of course, can go through your mind is enjoy the time you have, because it's very precious.
It's easy to live and gotta work my bike.
Of course, the day
That's all
that
the
you
one thing. I ain't about all that. Wipe out.
For most of Parchment Farm's inmates, the future resembles the past. It is a 130-year-old struggle to survive until it is over.
At least 8 more years. At least 8 more years. This was something that I didn't do, though. I know y'all hear that a lot, but this is the truth. I'm here for something I did not do.
I believe, man. A lot of people there for some shit they did not do. Like they trying to put me in there for some shit I did not do, but then they don't want to even show the shit that they did. I want the tape.
Just, I guess God has prepared me for that.
Nothing, see, when y'all say God this and God that, and the devil this and the devil that, y'all giving something to blame some shit on. This is all within you to know the truth is within you to come out. All this bullshit with the God and Jesus and the devil bullshit, that's the shit that was taught to us as kids to believe in. Never to know that the truth is within you. The divine love, unconditional feeling that you can't control. It's the truth. Stop it right there. See, you people that be on this game, you kids, if y'all don't understand that this game is teaching you how to be a menace to society. And if you keep up this game mentality, this game isn't going to do nothing but create you into a criminal. Because all the game do all day, every day is to you, show you violence. It is what it is. We got too much violence already in the movies to say that the game basically comes from the movies and vice versa. But the violence is the same. This is what we gotta stop. We gotta come together and stop the violence. We gotta stop the violence against each other. Because when you look at what the truth really is, we was taught to be stupid. We was taught to be stupid. So when I call you stupid, I already know what you really mean. Just as well as I already know what love, unconditional feeling, is the creator of all that we feel. But we are the greatest creations of all, the ones conscious thinking while feeling. But one thing we could never control, and that is the creator of all that has the control over the love, unconditional, the feeling. Because you can say you love somebody unconditionally, but whenever you get upset with that person, that's not love unconditionally, because the creator will never get upset with you. The creator gives you life. The creator gives you free will. The creator gives you the choice. The choice for you. I love knowing peace is divine, is on my mind, in my heart at all times. I love knowing that the spirit of all love, the love me unconditionally, all always telling me, hey, you're not selfish when you think for you. All you have to do is know me and tell the truth. Because I am all that there is in you. That's truthful. I'll just say people. Time for cut bullshit. We ain't some real. We ain't no fucking sheeple. That's what they want us to believe, that we sheeple. They want us to believe that we cattle. They want us to believe that we are all for them to corral around. But like I said again, the truth is the truth. And it will set you free. And the only place where you can be free that. And that's in your heart, baby. That's in your heart. That's where the truth is. Honest to that.